Have you ever noticed how some people's minds just seem to actually work with them? They decide they're going to focus, and boom, they focus. They decide to wake up early, and they just get right up. No inner negotiation, no desperate struggle with willpower, definitely no hitting the snooze button 5 times in a row. Meanwhile, for the rest of us, well, just deciding to do something feels like declaring an all-out war on ourselves. We're constantly battling procrastination and fear and distraction, and honestly, most of us just assume this is how we're wired, right? We think, oh, I just have weak willpower or my attention span is broken. But what if your mind's chaos isn't actually permanent? What if the reason your mind resists you so fiercely isn't that it's flawed, but simply because you've never actually trained it?
Okay, let's dive right into this. Mastery of the Mind, Musashi's 5 Principles. In this explainer, we are going to break down exactly how a 16th century samurai developed a highly systematic training protocol to completely, and I mean completely, eliminate internal rebellion.
Now, to really grasp this, we need to take a step back in time. Just imagine it's the year 1600, Harima Province, Japan. The stakes here, they aren't about missing a work deadline or, skipping a gym session. They are literally life or death. We're looking at a teenage prodigy who had been training his physical body every single day since childhood. He had sword technique and strategic wisdom that were just years beyond his actual age. But he was about to make a pretty terrifying discovery.
So, Musashi's early life was, frankly, exceptional. He actually struck down his very first opponent at just 13 years old. No way, right? But then, at age 16, during his 4th duel, something truly terrifying happened. His opponent charged, and Musashi's body knew exactly what to do. His stance, his grip, his timing, they were all absolutely flawless from endless hours of practice. But for 3 agonizing, eternal seconds, he froze. His mind literally went to war with itself. All these thoughts flooded in. What if his blade is faster? What if I die right here? His body was screaming to move, but his untrained, wild mind had completely hijacked his physical response. He barely survived that duel. And in that moment, he realized a chilling truth. In a death match, 3 seconds of mental paralysis equals death. He had spent 6 years relentlessly training his body, but 0 hours training his mind. What's really fascinating here is how Musashi responded to this near-fatal flaw. Because he didn't just go back and train harder with his sword. Actually, for an entire month, he stopped his physical sword training completely. His peers probably thought he'd completely lost his mind. But what he was doing was essentially running a 30-day study on his own consciousness, kind of like a researcher documenting a wild animal out in the field. He tracked every single time his mind resisted a decision. If he decided to wake at dawn and his mind was like, just 5 more minutes, and he slept, he noted it. If he decided to skip sweet rice cakes and his mind whispered, come on, just 1 won't hurt, and he ate them, he documented it. He started to realize he wasn't making decisions at all. His mind was deciding, and he was just passively following along for the ride. So the crucial point we have to look at is this revolutionary concept he developed, kokoro no shihai, which translates to mastery of the heart-mind. See, because most people identify completely with their thoughts, they have absolutely zero leverage to change them. Musashi realized a massive paradigm shift. You are not your mind. You are the decision maker. Your mind is just a tool. And just like a blade or a muscle, a tool has to be actively and systematically trained to actually respond to your commands. He actually captured this perfectly in his journal with a brilliant historical metaphor. He compared the mind to a horse. Think about it. An undisciplined mind is like a wild horse. It's going to throw you, injure you, and just drag you entirely away from where you actually want to go. But a perfectly trained horse, it stops exactly when you direct it, goes exactly where you point it, and responds to the absolute slightest pressure. It works right alongside your consciousness, not against it. But, okay, this brings us to a massive practical problem, right? How on earth do you train something you can't even see? I mean, you can look at a horse and see it responding. You can look at your bicep in the mirror and see it growing. But the mind is completely invisible. So how do you apply discipline to a ghost? Well, Musashi realized you train it the exact same way you train the physical body, through progressive challenge, consistent reinforcement, and entirely removing paths of resistance. Which brings us to his system. Let's look at Principle 2, Progressive Commands. You don't start by trying to conquer your absolute biggest fears on day 1. You start ridiculously small. Musashi's very first command was simply to sit completely still for 5 minutes. Now, if you try this right now, I guarantee within 60 seconds, your mind is going to start screaming at you. Your leg will itch, your brain will tell you, this is a boring waste of time, just check your phone. But instead of obeying his mind's complaints, Musashi gave a direct, firm command. No, we are sitting for 5 minutes. Obey. Over the course of weeks, he slowly scaled this up, reading for 20 minutes without letting his thoughts wander, meditating without moving a muscle, and eventually waking up at dawn without a single moment of negotiation.
Now, you might be wondering what happened when his mind just flat out refused. Well, he introduced a harsh but incredibly effective reinforcement mechanism, the number 10. If he commanded his mind to meditate for 30 minutes and his mind rebelled and won, the punishment was repeating that exact task 10 times in a row. If he hesitated even a little bit waking up, he would literally lie back down and stand back up 10 times. He was basically teaching his mind basic mathematics. Immediate responsiveness equals vastly less suffering than one act of rebellion plus 10 exhausting repetitions. Needless to say, his mind pretty quickly learned that resistance was futile. Yet even with this intense system, Musashi found a really dangerous vulnerability around month 2. Let's call it the sake sabotage. He would give a command in the morning, okay, no sake tonight, and his mind would obey all day long. But by the evening, the counterattack began. His mind would just softly whisper, hey, you've trained hard today. 1 cup won't hurt. You're being way too rigid. And because the sake was sitting right there in his room, literally just 3 steps away, his willpower would crumble and he'd drink.
This failure birthed principle 3, sen, or cutting escape routes. Musashi realized that the mind obeys when there is no visible escape route. So he threw out all of his sake. Now notice the massive contrast and effort required here. To drink now, the escape path required a 20-minute walk to the village, spending his money, dealing with social interaction, and then a 20-minute walk back. Suddenly, it was physically way easier to just obey the command of no sake. And he applied this everywhere. To ensure he actually trained at dawn, he'd commit to meeting a training partner. Backing out at that point meant social humiliation, fumblings for clothes in the pitch dark, and resetting an alarm. He didn't just rely on raw willpower. He engineered his environment so that obedience was literally the path of least resistance. And this brilliantly illustrates principle 4. See, Musashi noticed his mind was obeying, but often with a 5-minute delay. Start practice now somehow turned into, okay, I'll start right after I finish this thought, or maybe in just 5 minutes. That 5-minute gap, that is exactly where resistance and negotiation live and breathe. So to completely destroy that gap, he instituted the 3-second rule. When a command is given, action must physically begin within 3 seconds. Period. No gaps, no space for resistance to even enter the chat. If he hesitated past 3 seconds, boom, the 10x punishment kicked in. The gap disappeared entirely. Yet, interestingly enough, even with instant obedience and all those cut escape routes, Musashi still occasionally struggled. Why? Well, because of an internal civil war. He realized part of him genuinely wanted to be the greatest swordsman. Let's call that the warrior self. But another part of him just wanted comfort and ease, the lazy self. When these two parts hold equal power in your mind, every single decision becomes a completely draining tug of war. Whichever voice happens to be louder in that specific moment wins. It's kind of like leading an army where half your soldiers secretly work for the enemy. So, to finally end this civil war, he developed Principle 5, the unified mind. He created a completely non-negotiable absolute hierarchy of values. Mastery was placed at the absolute top, and comfort was pushed to the very bottom. He memorized this, it was law. So when his mind said, hey, let's sleep more, which is comfort, and his decision was, we need to train now, which is mastery, there was zero internal debate. Because mastery definitionally outranks comfort every single time. Having that hierarchy instantly solved the conflict, completely dissolving the internal division and making responsiveness feel totally natural. After just a year of this systematic training, his peers really started to notice that he operated almost like a machine, just deciding and acting without any visible struggle. Decades later, at age 60, after surviving 60 actual life-or-death duels completely undefeated, Musashi wrote the Book of 5 Rings, and in it, he revealed his ultimate secret. It wasn't superior technique, it wasn't physical strength, and it certainly wasn't genetic luck. It was simply this. My only advantage was this. My mind obeyed me absolutely. When he commanded courage, the fear vanished. When he commanded action, hesitation dissolved. Which really leaves us with this final, absolutely crucial realization. Your mind's disobedience, it's not a permanent character flaw. It is just a trained habit.
Every single time your alarm goes off and you hit snooze, you're running a little training session, teaching your mind that your commands are just optional. But every time you enforce a directive, you are actively training responsiveness. By the time we're adults, most of us have run tens of thousands of training sessions teaching our minds to ignore us. So take a hard look at your own daily habits and ask yourself this. In this exact moment, with the impulses you are giving into or resisting, are you training responsiveness or are you training disresponsiveness? Remember, you are not your mind. You are the master. It is time to train your tool.